my name's Sarah and this is my channel, So Sarah Sewed. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you everything I made over the months of July to October. So most of the things I made were in July, then I had a little bit of a lull in my making, but I did finish one thing in October as well that I'll be sharing with you. Today I'm wearing a Lotta dress by Tilly and the Buttons, a really simple pattern using a Dupes Designs jersey in this fabulous print. I love wearing this, very comfortable, elasticized waist and just a really easy one to throw on a warm day. Before I get into today's makes, I'd really like to thank everyone who commented on my most recent video. I received so many lovely and thoughtful and kind and encouraging messages. It just made me so happy to be back here and to be sharing everything with you again. And so yes, just a really big thank you, and I appreciate every single comment and like and everyone who watches these videos. The first thing I'll talk about today is a dress I made to make to the Melbourne Frock Tales event, which is back at the end of July. And I decided to make the Hughes dress by Friday Pattern Company. I actually made another Hughes dress towards the end of last year, and while I really loved the shape and the pattern I used, I just found it to be a little bit too snug, pretty much all across the bodice, especially the bust area. Last year when I made the dress, I made the size large, which did align pretty well to my bust measurements. It should have given me about 3 inches of ease across the bust, but I still found it quite tight. So I decided to go up to the size extra large this time, and it is a better fit. So I'm happy with that. The Hughes dress is this really pretty silhouette. It's got a scooped neck and then princess seams, and then it cinches in with some waist ties at the back. And it's around mid-calf length generally, or maybe a bit longer. So I decided to make mine in a black fabric I bought from Darn Cheap Fabrics. It's a blend of rayon, tencel and linen. So it's quite a lovely drape to it. And then I decided to use a lining that was a contrast. So this dress, the bodice section is lined, and also the 2 front panels of the skirt is also lined. And I wanted to have a different fabric peeping out from the skirt when I walked. So I'll show you. So here is my finished Hughes dress. It's a bit hard to show you, but I will definitely put some pictures in of me wearing it. But you can see it's got short sleeves, and then it's lined with this pretty, it's a rayon that I got from Spotlight. And I think it complements it really nicely. The only problem I have though with choosing this contrasting lining in the bodice is that it kind of peeps out a little bit from the button placket. So depending on which angle I'm standing on, you can kind of see it. So in some of the photos from the night, if I'm facing a certain way, you don't see that, but if I'm facing that way, you can kind of see it a little bit. Not such a big deal, but I suppose if I was to make it again, I might just line the bodice in a black and then just have the skirt lining pieces in that contrast. There you go. I have to admit I had a little bit of trouble with the buttons. There were just a couple of places when I was doing the buttonholes that just kept, failing every time. And I ended up giving up on a couple of them. And so while most of these buttons are functional and have working buttonholes, there are a couple that I have improvised. So this one here, rather than it being a working buttonhole, I sewed a little press stud in there instead, because it was just driving me crazy. So this is a really fun pattern to sew. It is quite time consuming because it has the lining, and some of the instructions say to hand sew the lining in, which I did. The other thing that took a long time, just like last time, were these ties at the back. Now after I made this last time, I decided I needed a loop turner. So I actually received one for Christmas, but it didn't help me at all. I actually found it really hard to use, and I ended up finding a tutorial on YouTube that just had me, I think, use a knitting needle or something and then sort of fold over the top, and I ended up getting them done that way. So I'm still not an expert with it being able to turn loops. I still find it time consuming and challenging, but I did get it done in the end. The Frocktails party was so much fun. I met so many lovely people and had a great night. It was in the middle of winter for us, and I also decided to wear a hand knit piece as part of my outfit. So I'll put some photos in, and you can see that I wore this with my Novice sweater that I made. It's a mohair one by Petite knit. And that just kept me warm. I wanted the silhouette to be a little bit cropped, so I ended up using just an elastic band and tying up the waist and then tucking it under to get the look that I wanted. So that's make number one, the Friday Pattern Company Hughes dress. Helen's Closet came out with a few new patterns in the middle of the year, and the one that particularly caught my eye was the ruby overalls. I wasn't really interested in making the overalls, but I thought I would love to make the pinafore hack. Now the pinafore hack is not part of the actual pattern, but Helen has got a blog post on her website that explains how to turn them from the overalls into the pinafore. I have made several York pinafores by Helen's Closet, and I wear them all the time, and I thought it might be nice to try a different pinafore pattern. And I had this cord from Spotlight in my stash that I thought could be a good option. So that's what I used. Now the shaping for this actual pinafore is created with some elastic at the back. So the shape of this is quite different to the York. It comes in quite a bit, and I really like that. I'll put some photos in of me wearing it. I've actually never worn this pinafore apart from when I took these photos. And I think the reason for that is this fabric choice. Because it's got these little white flowers on them, I don't feel it goes that well with black. And I'm not someone who wears very short clothes. This isn't a really short pinafore, but it's still shorter than I'm comfortable wearing without leggings underneath. So I like to wear black leggings with a lot of my clothes, and I'm just not sure that this one will work with black. So I've just never worn it. The other thing I would do differently if I was to make this again is to shorten the straps. Now in the pattern there are options for overall hardware, so it's adjustable, but I went with the quick option of just sewing my straps in, and I didn't properly check whether I was happy with the length of them. I did shorten them by 1/2 inch, but next time I'd probably shorten them by 1 inch or maybe even 1.5 inches, just to get them sitting that little bit higher and not have that feeling that they might fall down. There are no closures in this pinafore, so it was pretty quick and easy to make. The bodice section has a lining of the same fabric, so it's all very neatly finished. The pockets on the sides are in a nice position. I made a size 14 in this pattern, which worked really well for me. I have to be honest, I can't remember how I decided on the length. I can't remember whether I might have taken it from where the hip notches were and then added the amount that I thought. I can't remember, but it was really easy to do if just following those instructions on the blog. And yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out. I wish I'd made it in a darker fabric, maybe a black or dark blue cord, but I wanted to use something from my stash. So we'll see. I might try it with some black leggings and see if I like it, but I don't know. One of my goals this year was to make some pants that had a zip fly front, and I'm happy to report that I have made another pair of those since my last video. So back in July, I made the Peppermint wide leg pants, which is a free pattern from the Peppermint magazine. Now, I really enjoyed making these. I'm quite happy with the fit of them, but I don't think my fabric works for these pants. I used a heavy cotton drill from My Design in a charcoal color, and it is heavy. They're heavy to wear, and I think because the pants are so wide, the bottom of the pants, there's so much fabric, they just feel heavy. I feel like I'd like to try this again in a linen or maybe a cotton, because I quite like the silhouette, but I think that they would work better for me with a thinner or lighter weight fabric. I'll put some photos in. It might also be the color. I feel like, yeah, the color combined with the weight of the fabric just combine to give a very heavy feeling. both the way they feel and the way they look. I'm not sure. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, especially if you've made these on fabrics that you think work best. Because I would like to make some more. I'm also not sure if it's maybe the length where I cut them off, if I should have gone a bit shorter. I don't know. Anyway, I made a size E for this one, which aligned pretty well with my waist. I wasn't sure whether to go just that size up or not, but I think they're okay. And I think if I was to make them again, I would do the same size, especially if I was using a fabric like a linen that might give a little bit as well. But yes, I'm happy that I made them. Again, this is another item that I've never worn apart from putting them on to take photos, and I can't see myself wearing them just because of that discomfort of the heavy feeling. So I'm not sure what these will end up being, because it seems a waste to just have them sitting in my cupboard, not being worn. But it was a good learning experience, so I think that's always valuable as well. The other two projects I've finished since my last video of makes were knitted projects. So the first one is the Novice cardigan by Petite Knit. This is a pattern I did make last year as well, and I found I got so much wear out of it, it would be worth having another one in a different color. So the one I made last year was a brown, a light sort of caramelly brown color, and that gets a fair bit of wear. This time I had a really good long think about what would be the most practical color to go with as many clothes as possible in my wardrobe. And I ended up going with a bluey green color. This cardigan is knit with two different types of wool, one chunky one and then one strand of mohair as well. So the chunky wool that I used was the Alpaca 3 by Isaiah, and this colorway was number 18. And then I matched that with the silk mohair, Le Petite silk mohair by Biche et Bouche, and that colorway was called blue green. Luckily they worked really well together because I bought the wool online from two different stores, and there was, it's not really easy to be able to tell if they were going to work, but I'm really happy with the way that worked out. I made a size large for this pattern, same as last time, because I was happy with it. I made sure to make the sleeves a bit longer this time. Last time they were just a tiny bit short, so I kept knitting until I was satisfied that they were going to be long enough. And this really does get so much wear. We've had quite a long winter, or it's taking a long time for the weather to warm up. It has recently just gotten a bit warmer, but I believe it's going to get cooler again in the next couple of days. So my woolen clothes have continued to be worn for the last few months. I'll put it on and show you. So it's got quite a bit of room. I potentially could have made a size medium, but when you're layering up and you're wearing it over other clothes, it's nice to know that there's a little bit of space inside. I got my buttons from Button Mania. I'm lucky to have a fabulous local button shop, so those work really nicely. And I knitted it down to about hip length in this one. It's extremely warm and cozy. I'd actually used the Alpaca 3 yarn in a vest that I made last year, and I loved the feeling of it, so I was keen to make something else in a different colorway, so that's why I decided on this. So very soft and very warm, and I love this cardigan. The Novice cardigan is listed as a beginner pattern on the Petite Knit website, and I would definitely agree with that. If you're interested in making your first cardigan, I would recommend this one. It is very simple. There's nothing really hard about it. I do remember being nervous about doing a button placket because it was my first one when I made my brown one, but that was really easy, and nowhere near as stressful as sewing buttonholes. Knitting buttonholes is easy. So the last thing I made is also a knitted piece, and it is the So Faded Sweater by Andrea Mowry. This is a pattern that I had admired on Instagram. I love the way you fade one color of yarn into another. It's very effective. And the other thing that appealed to me was that it was knit with a finer yarn. So my cardigan was very chunky, and it's quite bulky and very warm to wear, and I wanted something just that little bit finer. So this one is knit with 4-ply wool. I used a sock yarn that I bought from Etsy, I decided to do kind of, the easy way and use a fade set for mine. So some clever people choose yarns that they'll fade into each other themselves. I decided to find my yarns that someone had already designed to naturally blend very nicely into each other. So I found a seller on Etsy called Yarn to You, and I think she specializes in fade sets. She had a lot to choose from, and the one I chose was called Earth. I think last year she had an advent calendar based on the elements. So earth, fire, water and air. I think that's right. And then she had dyed up some, so they were all mini skeins when she'd done the advent calendar last year, but then she also made some sets of just one of those elements. And the earth one were these beautiful pinks with a little bit of gold that when they got darker and added some dark greens and more sort of browns. And I fell in love with that, so I bought it. My set had 6 skeins of 100 grams each, and I decided for my fade sweater to use 5 of them, so I didn't use the darkest one. In terms of how I wanted to present the fade, I decided to put the lightest color near my face and then get darker as I went over my tummy. And I'm really, really happy with the result. And I'll put in some pictures. I decided to go with the size 38 for this one. You pick your size based on your bust measurements. And I believe the pattern said that it would work with 2 inches of negative ease or 2 inches of positive ease. My bust measurement is around 38, 39, so I thought making the size 38 would be fine. I decided I'd prefer a more fitted silhouette than oversized for this one, and it's turned out really beautifully. I decided to go with sleeves that were not all the way down to my wrists, but they were definitely much further than my elbow, because I do tend to pull up my sleeves a little bit. And I went with a semi-cropped length as well. When I looked up this pattern on Ravelry, most people said it was very easy, very clear, really simple. And I agree with that to an extent. I think if there was no fade, it would be pretty easy. What was tricky was knowing where to change your colors. So in the instructions, Andrea gives you, it's like a formula of working out how many inches of each color you should do between each fade, depending on the size you choose, how long you want it, and how many colors you're using. So I worked out all the maths and I started doing my fades. And the thing is, what changes in the pattern is where the beginning of the round is, because the whole thing's done on circular needles. And when you're doing the top bit, before you've separated the sleeves, the beginning of the round happens to be front center. But I didn't know that until I had separated the sleeves, and I was like, okay, that was the front center. And so I started doing my fade, my color changes right in the front center. And I mentioned this because I talked to my mum about it, who'd also made the pattern, and I said, I found that surprising. And she had also found it a little bit surprising and annoying as well, because you do end up getting like a seam where you've done those color changes in the front center. Now, I don't think it's really obvious unless it's pointed out, but I will point it out to you, because if this is something you want to make yourself, I would recommend not to do any fade changes until you've separated the sleeves, because at that point, the beginning of the round changes to under the arm, and then the seam's not obvious at all. So I'm going to show you, and I bet you can see it when I show you. So you can see a bit of a jog there where the yarn has been changed, and probably also because I pull it a little bit when I'm changing over my threads. I was much happier with the way the fade looked and felt when I started doing it underneath the arm when the beginning of the round had changed. So I would probably recommend using fewer different colors for this pattern, and not having to change the fade as often, and then avoiding that center seam problem. I don't think it's noticeable when I hold it far away, or, you know, no one would ever notice it. But I wanted to share that with other makers because it is something that you might want to consider yourselves. But I am really, really happy with the overall result, and I love the way the colours blend and the way it looks. Really happy with it, and I'm really happy I bought this kit. It feels beautiful to wear as well. So that is everything I have made since July. I am going to try and finish a few things in November, so I look forward to sharing those with you soon. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.